All right, hello, welcome everyone. My name is Chana Odom. I run the Ashaway Libraries Horror Book Club. We meet monthly and we read local indie horror. So I decided that we should do a panel with authors talking about writing horror and keeping it in that local setting. So I'm going to have everybody real quickly introduce themselves and then we'll get into the discussion.
Hello, I'm Sean McDonough. My local's a little further than some of these guys. I'm from New York, but I write. I kind of call it adult goosebumps. It's like it's bloody, it's violent, but it's fun. Like it's meant to be something you just kind of enjoy and have a good time with. So that's my vibe.
Gage Greenwood. I write adult goosebumps as well. I have some books out that I like, and I think you should check them out.
Where are you located?
Charlestown.
I'm JJ Alo, and I write it's going to be a series called the Southern New England Horror, mostly based in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island.
All right, so JJ, we'll start with you. You have the mic. Just pass her on down. They say that you always want to write what you know. So was that the driving force on the settings for your stories?
It was for the first story. A lot of what I had written was stuff that was based on sort of Connecticut history. My character was sort of based on my older brother, with his career, his marital issues. That's essentially it, and so it was the driving force. So I had a lot to work off of, build the story and the characters.
I think for me, it's a combination of writing what I know and trying to find out more about what I don't know. I think that's true with the themes of my books as well. I write about grief and addiction because I'm trying to explore the stuff that I've been through and see it differently. And I think that's true with the settings as well. I want to know more about the world that I live in, so it gets me researching and learning more about it.
And I think for me, it's almost kind of unintentional, but just the way I write, like I really kind of like settings, I like atmosphere, I really kind of like to give like a full fleshed out kind of surrounding. So if you write someplace that you're familiar with, that helps fill in those little details because you've seen them. You know what makes, I said I'm in New York now, I was in Los Angeles for a couple of years, like the little ins and outs of what makes your place special and interesting. So you can fill out that world better, which is my approach to it.
So why do you think keeping your writing in a local setting is key to your works instead of implanting, a local area or a local legend in a new area that you live in?
Yeah. Well, I do cheat a little bit sometimes because I will take, like for example, I wrote this book, The Class Reunion, which is like a slasher set at a abandoned Catholic school. And I went to a Catholic school, and my Catholic school is now shut down. And when I drive past drive to my parents, I can see the school. So it is very personal to me. But I did, for this one book, I took it and I put that town in Pennsylvania because just the way that some geographic story logistics worked, that's just what I had to do. But again, I took all the details that made it personal and just kind of moved them. So it still captured that same kind of vibe.
I think where I am and where I've been is a part of who I am. And for me, my stories are always very personal. So to capture the essence of what I see every day kind of brings that more to light.
I would agree with both these gentlemen had said with the settings and building your characters and then having to sort of move some of your scenes elsewhere. But keeping all the details more or less the same. But yeah, writing an area you're familiar with, you grew up in, it makes it at least for the author, more real. I think that adds to a lot of the element of your story.
Have you ever lived in another area that has influenced your works?
I haven't. I live in other areas, but nothing has really influenced my writing per se.
Yeah, so I grew up in Cranston, and I make fun of that a lot in my books. I love Cranston, but it's fun to make fun of. But I've also traveled a lot. I used to be a stand-up comedian, and I've lived in a lot of different areas. I've lived in Ohio, I've lived in Florida, and little pieces of the culture and personalities that I've met always infect what I write. And my next book is the first one that doesn't take place in Rhode Island, and it will take place in Mansfield, Ohio, which, if you are from Rhode Island and you've never been there, will be quite the culture shock, I promise.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Like I said, I'm from New York. I'm back in New York now. I lived in Los Angeles a couple of years, and if you've never been, for my money, most beautiful place on earth. But like a lot of my books are set in Los Angeles, kind of capture just the culture of being like in the city, or also just being on the highways and out in the desert. So it's like, you carry your lived experiences, your local experiences with you wherever you go, and you can call back on them to use them for settings, for characters, for background. So I would say 100%.
Do you think it's harder to adapt lore or to create new lore for the areas that it's set in?
Well, I would say it's always harder to adapt, because then you have to, even if it doesn't fit the details of what your story is, you're stuck with those details. You have to use them. I mean, if you're making stuff up, you can do whatever you want. So that's just naturally a lot easier.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think that it's kind of like a combination, right? Like you learn a little bit of lore, and you're like, well, that's interesting to a point, but I'm going to make it a lot wilder and a lot more insane. Most of my stories take place in a fictional town called Tanner's Switch, which isn't fictional because I just kind of carved out a part of Charahoe, and it's sort of like a little bit of Hopkinton, Richmond, and Charlestown. And it's crazy how much weird stuff has happened there. If you could go investigating on Google, they had like a nuclear reactor spill there, and like in the 70s, there was like, it was one of the biggest hotspots in the United States for alien sightings, which is all fun and good. But if you have a nuclear reactor and a train accident and aliens, you put all that together, you can make some real wild stuff out of it.
Nuclear aliens.
It's wild. Again, I agree with everything that is said. My first book is loosely based on a supernatural creature that supposedly stalked shoreline of Connecticut, but I also had to build on that, create something a little different, and then work out the details of that as well. What it was based on really wasn't much background on it, so I had to create the whole world around it.
So how much research have you done for your works with the local tie-ins?
A lot. I would say with my two books, the research is extensive. It's I have months planning, plotting, making sure most of it is somewhat realistic, accurate, but the details to me are very important for the story, and I try to make sure I know all of it prior to writing it or while writing it.
I definitely do a lot of research, but it depends on if I want to or not. Because one of the fun things about making it Tanner's Switch, which, like I said, is real in terms of the places that I'm using. I called it that fictional town so I could have a little bit of like the Western unicorn thing, which if you don't know what that is, these two guys wanted to write a Western, but knew they could never get the facts right, so they made one of the horses a unicorn, so they could always say it's a fantasy if anyone complained about the facts being wrong.
I'll be honest, I do enough research to learn what I need to learn, and then from there I'm just off to the races. Because at the end of the day, you're not writing, a history book or a geography book. You're not being graded on that. You want it to be real, but at the end of the day, you're telling a fictional story. In our case, often supernatural, weird kind of stuff. So you just are more interested in making it plausible enough that it sounds legitimate, but then you want it to make sure it works in the story. Like I did a witchcraft book, actually set in Rhode Island. Never lived here, but I did my best. But I didn't look up real spells. I just kind of got the flavor of, the herbs and the this and the that to make it sound legitimate. And most people were happy with that. But one review did say, this bozo has done no research. And I was like, fair, this bozo did no research.
What is one piece of local lore or legend that you would love to tap into in a story?
I said I don't do a lot of research, so I don't. And I mean, listen, like we have like a local abandoned insane asylum. Those are always fun, but I mean, like the local stuff that I like to take. It's more, like I said, kind of the settings and the color to make the world of whatever I'm going to do next, and then I kind of take it from there.
I think if I wanted to really target the real horror of my area, I would write something about the community Facebook pages. But that nuclear reactor thing that I brought up earlier is something that's been on my radar for a long time, because it was the first death at a nuclear reactor in the United States. And there's just so much story that you could make from that, you know? And I feel like it needs to be explored more. Also, Richmond had a train car accident that killed like 86 people or something, and really like changed the face of what Richmond became as a town because of it. So those two, I think, are two lores that I'd really like to get more into and make them a little more supernatural.
With where I live in Connecticut, there is a bunch of supernatural, folkloric, mythological stories that I'm planning to tackle in future books. There are these group of people that are called the, it was Norwich, but they're called the Melonheads, and they were cannibals. So I have an idea for a story sort of loosely inspired by that. And then I have something involving witchcraft I'm hoping to tackle down the road. They say witchcraft in Connecticut is equal to or actually more gruesome than what was, documented in Salem, Massachusetts. So that's another area as well. There's something with tuberculosis in Connecticut that people thought they were vampires. It's another area I'd like to get into myself.
First of all, I want that Melonhead story.
Have you ever had anyone give you opinions on how you've adapted those local stories or legends into your works? Either good or bad?
Would you repeat the question?
Either good or bad. Have you ever had anyone give you feedback or their opinions on how you've adapted those local stories and legends?
Not particularly. I mean, I've had people in reviews also mention their thoughts and opinions on my first novel and things that have happened, but never directly with any great detail.
Heather, the head librarian at the Ashaway Library, said that a woman took out my book on a clear day. You can see Block Island, and the very next day returned it and said, "I've been going to Block Island for 60 years, and I don't know how some monster could write about all these horrible things happening in such a beautiful place."
No one's ever really commented on me with the lore, because again, I use more of the settings, and I have had people say like, "Oh, I recognize, this part of Los Angeles, or I recognize that." But I will say, last year I was at this event, and I got a book from Gage, and I was going home on the ferry, and the place I stopped for breakfast had all these Block Island photos on the wall, and I was almost like, I too could now see Block Island.
Have there ever been things that you have edited out of your works from those local legends that you wanted to keep in, and why?
I really should have wrote more about local legends. There's always things that you put in, especially if you're trying to do local color and fill things in. Now, once you're going back in, trying to tighten up the story, those details, you have to unfortunately take out a couple of things you love to keep, but, kill your darlings, as they say.
I end up cutting out a lot of stuff because I go in a lot of different directions, and then at the end I decide which one I'm going to keep. But I sometimes, I have a very sarcastic personality, as you probably all know, and that comes across in my writing. And sometimes I have to look back and say, like, is this too mean-spirited? Because I make fun of myself, and I just think that's kind of how you should be with everything. But then I don't want people in my town to think I hate it, because I don't. I love it, you know. Like I said about Cranston, I make fun of Cranston ruthlessly in my books. But I don't live there anymore, so I don't have to see those people, so it's okay.
Yes, agreed. I've had to dial back some of the stuff in my writings. I live in the shoreline area where my first book takes place, and I also want to sound like I'm making fun of it and sound like I'm hating it in case people start to read the book down there. So that gets dialed back. And as far as my supernatural element and the details, my editor has forced me to cut quite a bit of stuff from my stories because she says they're just too detail-oriented and unnecessary.
In my next book, the one I said that takes place in Mansfield, Ohio, the first chapter is one sentence, and it's, I don't know what sucked more, homelessness or Mansfield, Ohio. So I'm sure it's going to be a hit there.
As someone that grew up in West Virginia, I can agree with that sentence. During your research, was there something that you came across that you found to be absolutely amazing, but you have yet to figure out how to use it?
Oh, God. I don't know. I got to think about that one.
If I know Sean McDonough who lives nearby, and I just don't know how to put him in my books yet.
Just put me in a nice place with a sandwich. Give me a nice deli setting. Yeah. Not yet. I mean, the book I'm working on now is my most locally set, like very Long Island, very New York. So this might be a good opportunity to put some things in, take some things out. So we'll see what develops.
Are there any therapeutic benefits to writing about a person or place that you know so well?
I mean, I would say it's nice. Like, it's especially if you're kind of trying to, do the idyllic part of a horror story where it's like, this beautiful town before we plunge it into bloodshed and darkness. Like, it's almost kind of like you're going on a walking tour through whatever, memory or place you're thinking of, which, feels nice.
About 3-4 months after I sobered up, I moved to Charlestown, Rhode Island. And I didn't have a job. I was like starting my life over from dirt bottom. And every day I would walk down to Charlestown Beach and I'd just sit there for hours on end. And when I started writing On a Clear Day You Can See Block Island, I didn't start with the opening chapter that's in the book. I started with the scene with Charlie sitting on the beach and just trying to see the island where his life sort of fell apart. So for me, yeah, it's very therapeutic. I mean, the whole writing process for me is sort of me trying to get through my shit. That's kind of why I write. So the setting is important to that because that's sort of my life. That's what I see every day, and it's been part of my destruction and it's been part of my healing. So.
Again, I would agree. The whole writing process for me as well has been very therapeutic. Kind of just dive into it, get lost in it for hours. I could write about anything you're feeling. You could take all your aggression and violent thoughts out on paper in your characters. But yeah.
What is one weird, hyper-specific detail you know about a character that is irrelevant to the story?
The first book I had extensive backstories for my characters that I had included in the writing, which I was forced to cut and edit out by my editor, with also good reason. Hyper extensive detail. I can't think of one.
You guys is great.
Can you repeat the question?
What is one weird, hyper-specific detail you know about a character that is irrelevant to the story?
That is irrelevant to the story? Okay. I will have a good one after Sean goes.
Yeah, to this point, I just want to say I'm so glad I wasn't asked for this because it actually gave me a second to think and come up with an answer. My book, The 13 Black Cats of Edith Penn, the main character, Rebecca, is just a huge nerd. Like, it's not at all relevant to her character, to her plot, to anything, but she is just a massive nerd. And the little hint that you get of this is like some of the references she makes, like she makes like a very obscure reference to The Flash. She makes a very specific Simpsons reference, like she's just a giant nerd. Now you're on, Gage.
Cassie from Bunker Dogs agrees with me that Sex and Candy by Marcy's Playground is the worst song ever.
I still have nothing.
All right. What book set in New England, the New England area, are your favorites?
Like other works of fiction? Well, it's tough. I mean, I'm hugely inspired by, Stephen King, so most of his books and fabled castle rockers are kind of my favorite books.
I have 2, Pet Cemetery, so I'll go with that Stephen King thing. But also The Keeper by Sarah Langan, which was so good. I picked it up like randomly at a Barnes & Noble or Borders bookstore in like 2002, and it had like the Bram Stoker Award nominated thing on it, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of a Bram Stoker Award nominated book that wasn't from Stephen King, and it really kind of helped me dive into indie horror, and that book was like the catalyst for me to learn that there was a lot more to the genre outside of the big names. And it's still one of the best horror books I've ever read. And it's criminally underread. So many people don't know it exists. And it's one of the most beautiful things that you'll ever read.
Yeah, New England cheats. You guys have Stephen King, so it's not fair to ask this question. Listen, I'm a huge fan of it. To me, it and Derry, that's, for my money, the best horror book of all time. So I would say it.
So what made you want to be an author?
I mean, I really kind of fell into it almost by accident. When I was young, not young, I was a teenager, but there was that was when the internet had still forum websites where you would go and you would talk about Freddy or Jason. And this one forum had a game section where there was a game called Kill the Person Above You. And you would just write I stabbed so-and-so with a fork. And then just people just kind of one-upping each other. And it just kind of somehow morphed into this giant collaborative novel where, you each had your own character and there was lore and backstory. And I just got into it. And I'm like, this is good. I can keep doing this. And here I am, 20 years later.
I don't believe in the definitions I'm going to use here, but for the sake of separating the two for conversation, I'm going to say a writer is somebody who writes and an author is somebody who publishes. Again, I don't believe that. I'm just doing it for the sake of this. But I grew up with a mom who was a poet in the 80s, and she was a published poet. She did it for work. And she absolutely hated it, despised it. But she always taught us about the writing part. She loved that part. She taught us how to write. She taught us how to correct ourselves, how to edit, and to read a lot. So that's what I grew up with. And it was always, writing wasn't even it wasn't an option. It was a hobby you had growing up. And it's just something I do intrinsically now. But I never wanted to publish because I only knew of it as this horrible experience that my mother had. I mean, she despised it. She thought it was the worst thing in the world. Because keep in mind, it was the 80s and she was a poet, which already isn't a genre that sells extremely well. So finding an audience, you didn't have TikTok to help you out there. And it was just a painful experience for her. So it never really was. Becoming an author wasn't anything I wanted to do. And it was something my girlfriend kept pushing me to do because she thought, she just thought that more people should be reading what I wrote. And then I hate to say it, but the lockdowns with the pandemics is really where she kind of convinced me to do that. And glad she did.
I grew up very sheltered. Middle school is where I was doing a lot of my short story writing. It was my hobby. I never had any friends, so I would, I guess it was one artistic outlet I enjoyed. It was short story writing. And then that kind of stopped in high school. And then 10, 11 years ago, I got the idea for the first novel I wrote, which sat in my head forever. And I decided to finally pen it out. It took me about 7 years to finally finish it all. Also, during COVID is when I finally got the editor and wrapped it up. I had all the time in the world, so it helped.
So what comes first for you, the plot or the characters?
Plot. My stories, well, I have two. They all start with one scene, vision, and then I kind of build everything around that. So for my first story, there's a scene in a basement with a flood and a creature attacking a family. That was the first scene I built the whole street between pines around.
It's never plot for me. And sometimes I finish a book and I'm still not sure what the plot is. Which is why I get reviews that say things like, this feels like 4 books in one. I come up with either a character or a scene or sometimes like even the title of the book. I'm like, this sounds like something cool, let's go with it. And then I just kind of go with it. And then I would say like in the second draft editing process is where I start to make sure that it's a coherent plot.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar approach to these guys. It's like something gets my attention. Either sometimes it is a title, sometimes it's a setting. It's something that I want to monkey around with, and then I just go and I keep going and I keep going, and eventually some kind of plot begins to like coalesce in there, and then that gives me more direction, and we kind of clean things up afterwards. But it's very much a seat of your pants process.
What advice would you give to authors just starting out?
Whatever you're working, I knew this right away, 'cause this is what I always tell people. Whatever you're doing, finish it. Don't worry if it's good, don't worry if it's bad, just you do not know what you have until you have done it from beginning to end. And also, that by itself is a very important skill, just the ability to finish a story, a poem, a short story, a novel, whatever it is, whatever you're working on, finish one full draft of it. And then after that, you can look back at it, see what you have, but you have nothing until you have finished a draft of something.
Yeah, I think mine is similar to that, but I think you have to not only not be afraid to suck, but to welcome it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, and I know this sounds discouraging, but there are times when you're going to suck. I do. Everybody does. Stephen King has written some kind of bummer novels. It's what happens, and you only get better by sucking. You have to continuously be bad at something to get good at it. And like I said, I used to do stand-up comedy, and when you did bad at that, they told you to your face very loudly. So at least you have the privacy when you're writing to suck just to yourself. And to appreciate it, because like some of the stuff that I will never show the world influenced some of my most popular stuff. So it really is like, it's valuable to suck.
Learn by do. Learn by do.
Exactly everything they said. It's important also, I think, to just have a real passion for it as well. I mean, you really have to enjoy the process and doing everything involved to create whatever it is you're creating. It's practice, write every day. I had a thought in my head, it's gone now. Yeah.
If you were to be remembered only by the words you have written, what would future historians think of you?
Say the last part again.
If you were only to be remembered by the words you have written, what would future historians think of you?
Oh, God. Deranged. I'm not sure. We could say he knew Connecticut very well.
This guy is a douche.
I think someone, studying my work would say like just that there's a clear love of the genre in everything I do. Like everything is just such a celebration of horror and like just the joy of doing all these terrible things to people who don't deserve it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's 100% accurate for you. It's like, you read his stuff and it's like, if you're a horror lover, it's like, you're hanging out with a buddy, you know what I mean?
I appreciate that.
Alrighty, and before I turn it over, if any of you have any questions, what can we expect next and where can we find all of your works?
Next up, I just put out a novel back in November, not another 80s horror novel, so I am kind of in between on my cycle. Like I said, I'm working on a Long Island set book that's like really about kind of like the restaurant industry, and which, you know, if you want to talk about research, actually, I've never successfully worked in a restaurant in my life, so I actually have been researching to learn to kind of capture that. But that's a ways off. I just started it. I actually owe Gage a short story for his new startup, Red Pop Magazine, which hopefully you're all following his Facebook page for that. If you're not, it's very cool. He's got a lot of good stuff going on. And finding my stuff, I'm right upstairs, so you can come back there. But all of my stuff is on the usual places, Barnes and Noble, the Amazon, which but I've been trying to really push people to a website, bookshop.org. It's an online website and it has all the books, it has everything, but it benefits like local independent bookstores, which I think we should all try and support them as much as we can. So I tell people, if you're buying online, bookshop.org is the place to go.
So my next one I was telling you a little bit is from Mansfield, Ohio is the location. It takes place in 2001. It's about the year that I lived there in my car, mixed with the horror elements of a demon named Puffin Billy. And that's called We Are All Dead Anyway. That will be out this summer. To where you can find me, GageGreenwood.com is the best place. My website will look very different at the end of next week once everything goes through. I'm doing an upgrade. And then also, as he was saying, I have Dread Pop Magazine, which we have a Facebook group, Dread Pop Magazine Facebook group, and then a Facebook page at Dread Pop Magazine, pretty much on all the social media sites. And that's going to be, it's a magazine where if you subscribe, you get a story a week from a different horror author delivered right to your inbox. And the goal for that is to introduce people to all different styles and subgenres and voices in horror.
My next book, it's a sci-fi horror western. It's called Misery Plaza. It releases in April. I have a couple copies upstairs I got from the wholesaler. You can find my books on Amazon, a handful of Barnes and Nobles in Connecticut and Southern Massachusetts, and my website.
And does anybody in the audience have any questions for any of our authors that they would like to ask?
Piggybacking off of one of the questions and some of your comments, as an author originally from the South, my first short story, the publisher told me to whitewash an African American character. And I did it, and I'm so ashamed to say it now. When I republished it in my own word, I put it all back in. So yes, as you have said, you've been asked to cut things. Have any of you been asked to cut culturally appropriate things? And if so, how do you manage that?
I self-publish, so I can say whatever the hell I want. But 10 years ago, I kind of skipped over this when I was talking about becoming an author. I did try and publish 10 years ago when I was freshly sober. I wrote a book and I found a small publisher who was brand new at the time as well, and you no longer exist. And the woman who ran it, I will just say, shared a very different political outlook than I do. And she posted nonstop on social media about her beliefs. But when I did, she messaged me, told me that I wasn't allowed to as an author under her umbrella. So at this time, we were going through the process of editing the novel, and it was her husband who was the editor, and he sent me back edits for it, and I just never responded to him. And they finally sent me a thing saying they were canceling my contract because I refused to be told what I can say online. But that book was In the Eyes and the Shadows, which came out recently. So.
Yeah, no, I self-publish as well, so I'm free to just make my own mistakes and people can tell me about them afterwards.
Anyone else? Yes.
For me, it was Universal Monsters and Michael Jackson's Throne. What made you guys horror kids?
I was on like a pipeline. It just went as a small child, Godzilla, to Aliens vs. Predator when I was 10, to Freddy vs. Jason after that. I was always on this train.
Mine was Pet Sematary again. But I had an older brother and sister who they loved horror, right? So they were always introducing me to it, even when I didn't want them to. I remember one Halloween when I was probably 5 or 6, my brother was watching The Shining, And he was like, this movie's gonna scare you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, nah, it didn't faze me at all. And then he flipped channels and Nosferatu was on. It's like old black and white movie. And it was that scene where he's like in the window, and I was like horrified for weeks. But then also it was the 80s, and I feel like in the 80s, it didn't matter what genre you read, every bookshelf had King and Kunz on it, right? That was just always there, so that was always like a mainstay for me. And also my sister had the complete collection of Edgar Allan Poe, and she would like give that to me and be like, read this story, and then we would talk about it and stuff. So I would say Poe was another big one.
I was the youngest of 4 siblings, so again, I was brought into it without my other discretion. My parents didn't care if we watched rated R movies, so I naturally grew up watching all the 80s horror flicks as they were coming out, whether I wanted to or not. But I gotta say, Friday the 13th was probably my favorite series as a kid. I don't know why, the slasher films. I mean, I liked them all, but Jason was always my hero.
What was it about the 80s that no one gave a shit what we watched?
My mom and dad thought it was okay for me to watch Jaws at age 5. I mean, you know.
You can tell definitely who's the Gen Xers and who's not, because we're like, it doesn't faze us. We're like, yeah, it's what we watched. And anyone younger than us were like, dumbfounded that was allowed.
I grew up in a video store, and I think my parents were just tired of hearing me bitch. Just said, watch what you want, we don't care.
I've got a kiddo now, and I don't really have any restrictions on that, on like horror elements that he can watch. But one day he wanted to, so he watches YouTube, right? And if you have a YouTube kid at home, they get into like a phase where they get into like artists who do like the cartoons that they like, but then those artists always do like the main characters from horror stuff, like Jason. So my kiddo was like super into Disney princesses, and he would like list them off, but he also loved Jason Voorhees and Pennywise without really knowing who they were. And so one day he determined he wanted to watch It, right? And I'm like, well, put on It. And I was like waiting for him to be horrified, but like 10 minutes in, he's like, this is boring. Just watch Disney.
Does anyone else have any questions? So I want to definitely thank our authors for joining us this afternoon. Make sure you visit their tables and check out their works. And also, I'm going to do a shameless plug. We do have the Horror Book Club at the Ashaway Library in Ashaway, Rhode Island. We meet once a month. We focus on local indie horror. And we usually always try to have the authors come as well to discuss their books when we have the discussions. Next month, this month actually, we're meeting on the 18th. We will be reading In the Eyes and the Shadows by Gage Greenwood. JJ has been a guest of ours before. And if you guys would like to join us, we would love to have you. You can sign up at director@ashawaylibrary.org or visit their website for the information, or you can reach out to me on social media. I'm CHANA Reads Horror, pretty much everywhere. So we would love to have you. And once again, thank you so much for you guys joining us.
I think you should also point out that we have pizza.
Yes, we do. We eat.
No, you have New England kids. Let's not get excited.
Oh.
Nice.